What are the consequences if you have bad quality sleep? One, you increase insulin resistance. That happens very quickly. And one of the consequences of that, you get fatter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Wellness Zone podcast. I'm Mary Perry, and I'm here with Dr. Barry Sears. So, Dr. Sears, this week we're talking about sleep quality, I should say. But before we start, how many hours of sleep should we be getting each night?
I think the answer is between 6 and 8 hours of sleep a night. But you're quite right. It's not the number of hours. It's the quality of the sleep that's important.
And why exactly do we need, you hear so much about the importance of sleep and health, but why is the quality of sleep important?
Well, because when we're awake, we're causing damage to our body. And so when we're sleeping, that's a chance for the body to repair the damage and get us ready for the next day.
And what about the energy? Like, how much energy does it take, for us to, just be able to do the whole sleep process?
Well, actually more than we think. We're asleep, we're not moving around. That's true. But our brain is. If our brain goes to sleep completely, we die. So we have to basically repair brain damage, but also give it enough energy to help us make it through the night. So again, it's really the brain that basically becomes a central focus of energy usage during the hours of sleep.
And you've talked a lot about ATP. So can you talk about the role, and obviously ATP is energy, but talk about the role of ATP in the brain and sleeping?
Well, ATP is basically the energy molecule our mitochondria make to basically cause our bodies to basically have good metabolic responses. ATP is basically comes from the food we eat. So that if we have the right diet, theoretically, we'll be able to make enough ATP to basically keep on the body going during the daylight hours, but also to repair the damage during the nighttime.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of ironic if you think about it, because you need ATP and all this energy to rest at night. But then, sometimes we're looking for sugar and caffeine and all these things to give us more energy to stay awake.
Well, again, because you're not doing a good job with the diet. And so that one of the first things we know that basically the ATP gets broken down and broken down into a small molecule called AMP. And that's where the enzyme AMPK is so important. You can now basically turn on the process to convert AMP back into ATP and begin the cycle again. But, and this is a big but, if your activity of AMPK is low, the metabolism keeps breaking down that AMP into adenosine. Say, well, what's adenosine? Adenosine is a molecule that has receptors in the brain, and when they interact, you become very sleepy, very tired. And that's why you say, when you wake up, for most people that wake up first thing in the morning, what's the first thing they're thinking about?
Food?
No, a cup of coffee. And why? Because it's the caffeine in the coffee that blocks the adenosine from interacting with that receptor. So you don't feel quite as tired mentally. Now you pay a price because basically you're still not replacing the ATP completely, but basically you're getting a temporary drug reprieve due to the caffeine. So here's a good rule of thumb. You should wake up refreshed and not need a cup of coffee. Well, that rules out about 98% of most Americans, but that's your best indicator you had a good night's sleep.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit more about poor sleep quality. So, and when we say poor sleep quality, is this just you're in bed and your eyes are closed, but you just haven't gotten into REM sleep? Or is this just, is it the restfulness of the sleep, Dr. Sears, that leads to the poor quality? Or, because I know there's a lot of health consequences with not getting the right amount of sleep.
Well, you mentioned part of this is REM sleep. You go through cycles of REM sleep, about 4 per night. And why? Because this goes through a repair process. Now, what are the consequences if you have bad quality sleep? One, you increase insulin resistance. That happens very quickly. And one of the consequences of that, you get fatter. That's one of the primary causes of increased body weight. Your mental performance is basically impaired. You're just not thinking sharply. And finally, you have an inability to stay awake. That's why I keep on grabbing another cup of coffee. So the fact is, you see short-term deficits and also long-term deficits. And more importantly, a number of disease states are linked with increased insulin resistance. I mentioned one, obesity. Another is type 2 diabetes. A third is heart disease. A fourth is Alzheimer's. All of these are basically consequences of poor quality sleep.
So, Dr. Sears, let's talk about some of the things that impact our sleep quality. So, what are some of the factors you know that are going to make you more likely to not get a restful sleep?
Well, one of the first things is basically not respecting the power of sleep. Now, and that's controlled by what are called circadian rhythms. Basically, our body and our metabolism is set by the sunlight. That basically the sunlight is a key factor for our survival, and that's why it contains a lot of blue light. So blue light basically perks us up. First thing you wake up, it's a sunny day, you say, I feel great. However, when the sun goes down, so does the blue light. And that's a signal to the brain saying, we're going to start basically winding things down. However, we can basically disrupt that natural rhythm by basically exposing ourselves to a lot of devices that also generate blue light at the wrong time. Now, what are some of those things? Smartphones, TV sets, tablets, computers, LED lights. I say, well, but that makes life so much easier. Saying it does, but it makes your metabolism work a lot harder than it has to. So one of the things you want to do, besides having a good diet, is also to basically respect circadian rhythms. When the sun goes down, start beginning to reduce the amount of blue light exposure that you have. Say, you mean no TV, no computers, no social media? I'd die. No, you won't die, but you'll probably live better.